And we are live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Becoming Alpha podcast. I'm your host, Dan. As always, behind the camera is Brandon.
What's up?
And we are joined here with Angela Damiani, the CEO of NEWaukee and Newance, currently, your newest endeavor. And then what else?
We also have a company called the Rev Collective as well.
And what is that about?
It is a collective for women and non-binary individuals who are interested in supporting one another to achieve their dreams.
I see. And what else have you been involved in?
Well, I have sort of a serial entrepreneurial journey. When I was 23 years old, I started my first company, which is how I ended up meeting the guys at NEWaukee because they asked me to do some free press work for them. I was like a tiny little PR shop back in the days when small businesses were getting online, you know what I mean? Building little websites or starting their social media presence. It's kind of funny to think about now, but there was a time when people didn't know how to start a Facebook fan page for themselves. And so that was what my first company did.
I see.
And then we had a nonprofit organization called NEWaukee for a long time as well, which we ran really in tandem with NEWaukee's programs. And along the way, we decided to sort of go full steam with NEWaukee, and we just sort of like adopted NEWaukee's programs underneath the NEWaukee banner. And so part of that was because we just didn't want to compete with other nonprofits. We felt like our mission really was to help support small businesses and nonprofits find the customers and the supporters they needed for their missions. And we felt like competing with them for grant dollars and all of that was not something that was really like, I don't know, good for our mission, good for our hearts.
Sure.
And so we let that go. So there's been a lot of companies along the way. I joke with my partner, Jeremy, who is partnered on all of those different endeavors, that we'll just keep starting new companies together until we die. It seems like every couple months there's some new idea.
Yeah. So you went to University of Minnesota. Did you know what you were going to do out of that? Did you know that you were going to be an entrepreneur and starting all these companies?
No, it's so funny. And I was dating a guy in college who always talked about how he wanted to own his own company and was really entrepreneurial. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't want anything to do with that. I want something that's like more stable and secure. And I had a really awesome internship at Honeywell in their like marketing communications department. And I thought, well, maybe I'll like leverage this into getting a full-time job. And that didn't end up happening. And I did get a job out of college working for the International Press Services. So I was able to use my PR degree right away, which was really exciting. And I did that for, I think, all of 9 months before I decided that I hated it. I hated working for someone else. And maybe I was just unmanageable. But I decided I could figure out how to make money for myself if I did it on my own. And then I think maybe because I was young and naive, I decided to do it. And, there's something I think about risk tolerance. Like the more risks you take, the more fortified you get in the fact that you can always start again. You know what I mean? Like even when you fail, you can start again and again. And though it was funny help because there's a group of women who founded Rev Collective, and all of that kind of came together at the end of 2019. And I remember sitting in the planning meetings for that. And all of those women own other businesses. They're all entrepreneurs in their own right, small business owners. But what was curious to me was I always thought, particularly in the dynamic with my current business partner, Jeremy, I'm the one that, tends to be more planful and operational. And you want to stop?
Sorry.
It's okay.
It keeps like dipping down.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
My bad.
So in my current relationship with Jeremy, I tend to be the one that's like more operational and planful. And as we were setting things up for Rev Collective, I was realizing I was the one that was like pushing us to just like hurry up and get started, hurry up and launch, hurry up and launch. Like, and I had this moment where I was like, wow, I've become like a risk taker, and I don't know when that happened. Like, I don't know when my tolerance for risk kind of like
was it at your first job, you think?
I think it's been an evolution. Like, I think you just realize over time that like everything anything is possible if you try hard enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just need to like get in and get started.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really my like call to action was like, let's just get started. Let's not plan and plan and plan because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the case of COVID, like I never would have thought that we would have to deal with something like this. And I think what's been a silver lining of that is it's helped everyone realize that things are always uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is a sure bet.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can recreate things again. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
not to minimize what people have lost. I know that people have lost a lot of things. I mean, us included, we had to completely reinvent Milwaukee in the last 3 months, given that
Yeah.
our primary role is to gather large groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a reality we can, sustain in this current environment.
Yeah.
But I think if you, believe in yourself and your own creativity, you can always generate a new possibility, a new reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of been my like internal mantra is like, how do we have uncompromising momentum forward
Mm-hmm.
for whatever is going to be thrown at us next?
So how are you dealing with COVID then?
Well, it's been interesting because in a lot of ways, I have really appreciated the chance to reflect on everything we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
NEWaukie's always been a really small team, and it's been intentional in that way. Just because that's the lifestyle I've wanted to live. You need to have a really like tight-knit team who everyone that's on board is like really, really good at what they do. And, we've had to sort of ask ourselves, like, what does NEWaukee look like in a virtual space? We've always had a really large digital subscribership, which we've been proud of and we've talked about, but we haven't really had to tap into because the point was we were trying to tell people who were digitally subscribed to us to meet us in person.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we can't do that, we've had to ask people to meet us online.
Yeah.
And that has gone really well. I mean, I think we've been a source of positivity and a chance for people to still connect, you know what I mean, when they're like hungry for connection because we've been separated for so long.
Yeah.
And at least for the time being, we're going to continue to follow that path.
Sure.
And then we've also been able to really pivot some of our consulting services. I mean, for the longest time, I had this vision that we would, kind of teach people what we learned in the last 11 years, what we've become experts in about experience design, about how people move, about how to inspire action. And we've been so distracted by the large scale events that we really never had time to focus on that as a business development opportunity. And in this way we have been, and it's been so exciting to be able to talk about the theory of social architecture and then to be able to train people on it in a way that had we been, setting up the night market, because we're such a small team, that could really like shore up our whole capacity and all our bandwidth. Without that on the table, we could focus on this in a way that I'm excited about. I mean, I don't really know when COVID finally dissipates. Are we going to come back in person? I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I hope that NEWaukee is still a place where people feel comfortable to come back to. But in the meantime, I feel like we're finding this new normal.
Yeah. Have you been coming up with new events then?
Yeah, we've been doing about a dozen events a week. So at a brand new volume.
A dozen a week?
Yeah. And what's cool about it is we've been piloting a bunch of new series and things that we wouldn't have probably experimented with if they were in-person events, because there's a lot of hard costs, right? Like you have to rent a venue, you have to organize AV and all of that. And what's cool about the virtual world is you can test new things and I guess fail faster. If nobody signs on, we can quickly decide like, oh, that isn't, you know what I mean? An option for us. We don't need to like continue going. And there's something that's kind of nice too about how noisy the internet is. Like you don't feel the like heart twinging shame of no one showing up. Like there's definitely been events in the last decade where we thought it would be really cool and no one has come.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think people see the night market and things like that and they think like, oh, you always have 15,000 people come and you don't. You know what I mean? Like we've definitely tried things that we thought were going to be awesome and nobody cares about. And so what's fun about this is we can really be experimental, and it's been really awesome to see how creative our team has been. Like, I mean, really, there's no there's no reason to say no to any of the concepts. You know what I mean? And the things that work, we've been able to like iterate on and fine tune. And the things that don't, we've been able to quickly say like, all right, well, we tried it. Now we can let it go.
Scratch it off. So what platforms are you using to do this?
Mostly Zoom, to be honest with you. Okay. And then obviously like Facebook Live. We do record anything we do and then throw it up on YouTube afterwards for folks who aren't able to like join us. But that's been our main platform for that. And it has actually been kind of lovely. There's really great functionality to that, whether it's a webinar or one of the meeting formats to allow people to actually interact with one another.
So when building your team, what was that like? When it was was it just you and Jeremy? You had a third partner, didn't you?
We had a third partner at the beginning. And then we had like a bunch of people who were in the periphery. I mean, I would call them like volunteers who, you know, helped us kind of shape the initial programs and even ran some of them for us. Like we used to do things like, you know, volleyball leagues and volunteering and things like that. And people would help us coordinate all of those.
So what was the initial concept then?
I mean, really, it wasn't that different than what it is now. It was around meeting people and exploring the city, right? Like, how do we create forums for people who have similar interests to gather and then have an invitation to go participate in that? That isn't that different than now. And I would say we built the team. You know, I hate to say this because now we advocate for so much intentionality around that with all of our clients, but we did it sort of haphazardly. We picked people up along the way. And some folks have been with us. I mean, one woman is coming up on 8 years.
Wow.
I mean, 8 of the 11 years we've been around. That's like incredible tenure. And
who is that?
Nicole.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so we always joke that we can't get rid of her.
Yeah.
You know, she was an intern with us and she just sort of, we like told her internship was over and she was like, no. And she just like hung around until we had the money to pay her full time.
Yeah.
And I guess that says something about maybe the culture we were building and also her tenacity. But over time, you know, at first it was sort of like everyone needed to know how to do everything we were doing. And then over time we sort of built in specialties. And so, having that now have people be like content experts in the areas that they work in means that we can work really quickly to deploy new things. You know what I mean? Like there's just folks who know how to do what they know.
So at first, you were kind of just giving people the opportunity, right? And if they liked it and if they wanted to stick with it, they had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, we were so intentional with the way that we launched Newance and Rev Collective. You know, there was like a business plan and our partners for both of those companies knew exactly what the industry was. And they wanted to partner with NEWaukee because they, you know, really liked us, like the way we work, believe in experience over transactions. You know what I mean? So there was some like values shared there. But they were really the experts in both of those fials. And we were able to lean in that. So
Newance and...
yeah, for Newance, it's Amanda Daring. So she's actually the CEO of Newance and our co-founder with that. And she's worked in HR and talent acquisition for over a decade and had some really specific ideas about how she wanted to change that industry.
So how did you meet her?
Really through, I think just networking. Maybe she came to some of the programs. Jeremy met her, I think, first one-on-one. And she told us she really wanted to, you know, branch out and do her own thing. And he said to her, well, we've been talking about doing that for a long time. Would you want to get together and do it, you know what I mean, in unison? And it's been really like a wonderful match with her expertise. And I mean, she's just so brilliant. Like,
it's funny how that works.
Yeah, I think in some ways those things could be really kismet. You know, we had been talking for a long time about how we had all these people coming to the programs and we had companies who were sponsoring the programs, but then, you know, asking like, do you know a data analyst? Do you have like a, you know, a project manager? And we always said like, well, come to the events, maybe we'll meet someone. And anecdotally that had been working, but we had no ability to like make that match happen. And she and her team know how to do that. You know what I mean? And so it's been just a beautiful partnership in that way. And really the same thing happened with Rev Collective. Those, my co-founders had been really practicing the facilitation method that is the differentiating factor of that. It's not just a membership organization, but everyone that is in it is trained on this really specific protocol for how you achieve what we call radical vulnerability in a short period of time. So you get really bonded to your collective, and they really help you, hold you accountable for what you say you want to achieve. And they had been practicing that for 5 or 6 years. And they invited me into one of the sessions to see what it was like. And I just said, like, this is incredible. We have to show other people this. You know what I mean? And they had really wanted to expand it. And so it was just this perfect fit from that perspective too. And I don't know what other companies are in the future, but I imagine it'll end up being the same thing for us. Like, we just tend to have this sort of an organic growth model. And I know some people like to, have like a 5-year strategic plan. And I don't know. I feel like if I had tried to write down where we are now 5 years ago, I don't even think I would have been able to imagine it. Yeah. Like, it's just so much has changed. Technology has changed so quickly. The city has changed so much since we started, and it's impossible, I think, in a lot of ways to build a 5-year plan. We operate with a 100-day plan for all the companies. Like, what are we doing in the next 3+ months?
Plus, it's the people you meet too. You never know who you're going to meet.
You really don't.
Yeah. We had, what did we have, a 5-year plan? Do we have a 10-year plan? Yeah. What was that book that you got?
No, it's a 13-week plan. Essentially, you write out where you want to be within 13 weeks because in the shorter term, it makes you like continually push, as opposed to just plan, because you can actually visually see where you're at now versus the next week versus the next week versus the next week.
Yeah, and it breaks it down in chunks. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a large scale goal that's going to take multiple years to achieve, but I think having those 13 weeks is 100 days, right? Like, having that kind of top of mind, what am I doing this week to get to that goal? It's bite-sized chunks that help you, you know what I mean, to actually achieve that. Yeah. And I think that's the only way really to work. It's also a way to pivot quickly. I mean, it was really easy for us because we were working through, the first 13 weeks of this year when COVID hit, for us to like look at that list and say, all right, what of this can stay? What of this needs to change? What else we need to add to this? And not feel totally discombobulated, like, oh no, what do we do with our revenue projections falling off? And you know what I mean? Like, it was like, let's just quickly adapt. And I think if you are constantly looking at things in those shorter runways, it's easier to feel like you can pivot right away rather than be so attached to what the plan was.
Yeah. When it comes to planning with partnerships, something that I wonder with Dan was, with you and Jeremy, how did you delegate responsibilities when starting NEWaukee?
I think we just sort of like leaned into what we were each really good at.
Okay. It seemed like you guys had like a yin and yang kind of thing.
I mean, we really do. That, even when I think about our first interaction, it was like very indicative of how we would end up working together. He's incredibly creative, and really like relationship based in the way that he works. You know what I mean? So
he's very good at cultivating relationships.
Really good at building relationships, getting people to have buy-in for what his vision is. And I tend to be really good at like operationalizing things, getting down into the minutia, trying to find a way to like bring that vision to life. Yeah. And so that has been the same really since the beginning. And where we've added team members is where our skills have fallen short, so like, neither of us knows how to graphically design something, or whatever. And even in some of the things that I don't do anymore, like I used to be really heavily involved in the event planning. Along the way, we added Rita to our team, and she's so much better at it than I am, than I ever really was. You know what I mean? And so part of our own leadership development in this journey has been recognizing where we maybe have shortfalls and being really strategic about where we add to the team so that we can function at a higher pace, because we're not trying to like work against what is innately not our skill set. You know what I mean? Like I would never give Jeremy the task of building out a budget. It would take him, it would probably end up completely wrong. We're missing most of the stuff because he never seems to be able to think through all the costs for things. And it would take him so much longer. Like why would we do that? Why would we waste any of our energy that way?
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, I don't do any of the like program design because it's not my skill set. You know what I mean? I get way too stuck in the weeds. It's too hard for me to like, get to that 30,000 foot vision. And so I think being really honest with yourself about what you're good at helps you to work better on a team.
Yeah,
You know what
I think that's where we're at and where we've been building. And I think we have a good yin and yang thing going on too, where it's almost the same thing where I'm more creative and Brandon gets the day-to-day structure down.
Totally. And it's okay to stay in your lanes and to know where you need to sync up. I mean, I think it's one thing to be in your lanes and then sometimes like those lanes can veer off. Like I think it's really important in a partnership to establish where those checkpoints are. And then to be honest, like to say like, I'm kind of struggling with this. I could really use your support. Could you look things over? And we do that with one another all the time. I mean, one of us will have the other person really help edit or even like iterate on something that we know is not as good if it's just coming from one of our worldviews. And I think honestly, it ends up being so much better because we each have such different perspectives. The combination of our perspectives really helps to refine things in a way that it wouldn't be possible if it was just from one of us.
So did you guys have like daily meetings or weekly meetings? How did you go about that?
Our meeting schedules have totally changed with COVID.
How about when you first started? Because what we've been doing is every morning we'll get together when we get there and we kind of lay out the plan for the day. What do we want to get done today? And that's been helping us because we were so discombobulated for a long time.
Totally.
And once we sit down, we found that that's helped us out, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing as the 13 weeks where we just reduce it
to 1 day and ground it.
And they were like, because we felt we were, there's a quote where we were overestimating how much we could do in 1 day and underestimating how much we could get done in X in a week or in 2 weeks and whatnot. So
totally,
just kind of reducing it helped.
Yeah, I think it's changed for us over time. Now because it's not just the two of us, we have to manage a team as well. So we're always being thoughtful about that. He and I need to touch base at least once a week, just the two of us, to talk about like some of the like, usually it's business development stuff. Like where do we see certain things going? How fast we want to take certain projects, you know what I mean? And things like that. I mean, we talk every day, we joke that like we text each other at all hours of the day. There's like no sense of like boundaries about like how late or how early it is. But at least one meeting a week. And then with our team, we do like a standing staff meeting on Mondays. And then something we started in COVID, which I hope to continue in the future, is on Friday afternoons, something called a focus chart, where it's just our top line goals for the next week. And so similar to what you're describing, it's like, all right, you can see our 100-day goals are at the bottom. And then for this next week, this is how we're like making sure that we like move that forward.
Yeah.
And that really helps to orient the team. It helps for everyone. I mean, it helps us to be incredibly transparent about where we are with our like finances, where we are with our sales pipeline. And then like if things need to kind of shift gears, like where that needs to take place. And because part of NEWaukie's role with the other companies is to provide some like back of house like operations. It also helps to kind of provide some context for each of the companies. So what is NEWaukee doing? What is Rev Collective doing? What is Newance doing? And where does the NEWaukee team need to support those efforts? And it's not all the time, but it's good for them to know like, where the North Star is for each one of those along the way. And so far that seems to be what we need to do. I mean, we used to have a standing like 2-hour meeting every midweek, but just 2 hours on Zoom is too much. Like it's too hard. And so,
I'd say,
having this sort of document that we like briefly touch down on, and if people need to like sidebar on their specific part, that seems to be working better. And we're just trying to be really conscious of how emotionally exhausting this virtual work life is.
Have you had any meetings with clients on Zoom?
All entirely. We haven't had a single in-person meeting since March 13th. It's been great, actually. I mean, I think everyone has leveled up. That's maybe one of the benefits of this is, we all had to, myself included, because I really was not as like technologically savvy as I have become in the last couple months. We've all had to like ubiquitously learn like every single virtual platform that exists. And we can't really like hide behind like the idea like, oh, I'm not really that tech forward. Like, no, we all are now. We have to be in order to like continue to function because we can't just stop working because we can't get together. And I've noticed even in the last couple of weeks since June has started, I think the first couple of weeks, everyone was sort of like screeching to a halt and then trying to like reorient themselves. And now I feel like with the season changing, it's like people recognize that this is going to be how it is for the long haul. And so there's more comfort and less, even less like lamentation. Like I remember like that was kind of like the start of every client meeting was being like, ugh, I just, you know what I mean? This is how working remotely is annoying me today. And it seems like people are just like in it, you know what I mean? Like, let's just move forward. What are we doing? You know, that kind of thing. So we've been really trying to figure out a way to create space virtually for creative brainstorming, because I do think there's something about the energy of being in the room together and kind of like vibing off each other. And you lose some of that without the body language, without, and even the way that video conferencing works, like you each have to present your idea. You're not really having a conversation in the way that like you can interrupt each other in person. Like you just can't hear, it gets all mumbled. And so we've been trying to develop some new protocols for how that happens so that as a team, I mean, because that's just such a big part of what we do, right? Is like constantly, interacting and creating new things together. And I think it's been working pretty well. It'd be interesting for you to interview our team and ask if they think it's going well.
Well, we can definitely do that. Yeah, we've been doing Zoom calls with clients, and at first it was kind of weird. I think it was just because like I feel we are better when we are in person, when we can talk to them, when you can emotionally connect with them. And now it's been Zoom calls. How do you feel those have been going?
I thought they were going okay. Calls. I mean, we usually always hook up our mics and everything, so we look like we're ready to go.
Yeah, we try to look.
Wow, you guys are ready for this because we got our mics.
Yeah, you do have all the gear.
Yeah, so they're really nice. They're on their webcam, and we'll hook up the cameras, and we're just looking really nice. And
you're super crystal clear.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've been trying to
stuff. That's what we want.
I mean, honestly, though, that makes sense. You guys want to look like you know what you're doing whenever it comes to
That's what I always say. Even when we go to shoot, sometimes we come with all this stuff, and they're just like, "Oh, okay, these guys are here for some business."
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. For sure.
So, from a client standpoint, from the beginning, how do you feel was the best way to get clients or to prospect for clients from the beginning to now? Was there any change in it too?
It's interesting you ask that because we've been having this conversation the last couple of weeks because part of our sales process is really to be out in the community and then, just sort of naturally run into people. We've never been a company that's like cold called or like prospected.
Did you have to in the beginning though?
Not really. Like I think our first sponsor came to us.
Really?
And then, once you get someone, then you can say like, look, we have clients. And then that, somebody just wants to like see that someone else has jumped in the pool, let's not, or they really like believe in your energy, and so they want to like help fan those flames with you. I think that's how it starts for everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like it's weird to like cold call or cold email people.
That's where
still
we're
like
at.
I just feel like it's
it
like
is so weird.
It feels so
it's
like
rough sometimes.
I don't know. I just feel like, but if you don't need it, then why am I bothering you?
Yeah.
That's just my like. Maybe we would make more money if I felt differently about it. But I just think it's like all relationship based, like
100%.
all of our clients I can trace back to some point of origin where we've like had some kind of relationship or someone we've had a relationship with has recommended us. And I love that. It means that like, even through all of this, people have stuck with us. You know what I mean? And they've really trusted us, and they've given us like the space we needed to figure out what that pivot was going to look like, and all of that. And I just think that it feels so much better because then it's not so, well, first of all, it's not so one-off. And second of all, it feels like we're in it together. You know what I mean? Like their success is our success and vice versa. And so, but a big part of that process for me was our programming. And you randomly meet people at our programs. Those have always acted as our sort of like sales marketing. Or even little things like, you know, working out of a coffee shop and running into someone and then being able to follow up like, hey, it was so great to see you. Because I've been like trapped in the house. You know what I mean? It's been this like weird thing where, I mean, I guess in some ways, the fact that we've all been sharing this collective experience has been helpful because we have something in common. You know, sometimes I guess when you're cold calling, like, you don't know if you have anything in common, let alone if they want to buy something from you. And so there is something to kind of like talk about, like, hey, how are you navigating this like hellscape of uncertainty? You know? You know what I mean? And everybody has something to say. You know, it feels like much better than just asking like, hey, how are you? You want to buy my stuff? You know?
We make cold calling a process where we sit down and we just go back and forth, and we just call for maybe 2 hours out of the day every now and then, just to see what we can get, or if we can build a relationship or whatnot. And do you want to tell about your great voicemail?
So what we try to do is like we try to record calls, right? So
we can look at them and see what can we do better.
We record ourselves doing the call, and there was just one time where I called a guy, and Brandon's like, "All right, energy," and I was like, "Hey, dog, how you doing? My name is Dana from Alpha Digital." Brandon picks up the camera, and the mic falls off, and my brain just goes like dead because it was just a loud smash. So this guy listened to this voicemail, and it was, "Hey, this is Dan from Alpha Digital," and then a loud smash. And then it was just silent, and then like beep, hangs up. So that happened that was the last time we did cold calls. And ever since.
He just thought something really bad happened to this random guy.
Well, it's
just
all right.
uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to randomly call somebody.
It is really uncomfortable. And I don't know if there's any way around that. And I don't really know if I believe it works. Like, I guess I haven't really seen that work. I mean, I think about, you told a story about how you were moving and you found like a slip of paper with somebody's phone number and you texted them randomly. Like that, I think leads to more business than some stranger.
Well, I did meet him in person. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Like
2 years ago.
So I don't know. I think, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, you know, it's obviously like the Northwestern Mutuals of the world have a sales pipeline, you know what I mean, where they train those people, like you have to have 100 calls that lead to 10 meetings that lead to one client. Like they have that whole thing.
That's what
down.
I used to do.
They're like a $1 billion times 1,000 like company. But for us smaller service providers, like, I get it. You guys are doing all your prospecting. You're doing all your delivery. You're doing all your client. Like, you're doing all of it. So, like, how much time can you spend on it? And then what feels good and natural and true to who you are as a person. And I find that when you are yourself, you're more confident. You're more secure in what you have to offer. And that's why people buy, because they feel like they're going to pay you and you're going to deliver on what they're paying you for. And so that's been my operating procedure. Maybe it's wrong.
No,
I don't
that's
know.
why meeting people in person is just... Brandon met some dude on a jet ski. Was it 2 weeks ago?
I was on a jet ski, and his jet ski was dead, and I towed him back to his
Didn't you...
and he was like, "What do you do?" I told him we do digital marketing. You know, we're in the video marketing space mainly, as well as website design and yada yada. He said, "Oh, we're literally about to fire our current video provider, and we're looking for a new one." And it's just kind of crazy how things work out when you start to help people and talk to them, you know.
I think the week before, you like were talking about wanting to help people, like ways, how can we help people? How can we give to the community? And then like a week later that was answered, and some guy is stuck on an island with a broken jet ski.
Since all this stuff's been going on, I've just listened to a lot of different podcasts and motivational stuff. And one of the suggestions that somebody says if you just start helping people, then things will naturally, you'll start finding the things where things in your life fit and whatnot. So that's just something
I 100% agree.
That's why you're successful too, is people believe in your vision and you have a clear vision and people want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, really what our hope has always been to be a pass through, right? Like how can we be the platform for other people to connect? And I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did for how this all plays out, but I do feel really secure in the idea that we will find a way and that we still want to be a beacon of hope and connection for the city of Milwaukee. And so hopefully that can still be true in the virtual reality as it extends and then on into the future.
So do you have any ideas for the future right now? Anything in the pipeline, anything in the works? I know Jeremy, where did we see Jeremy? We saw him at a networking event.
It was Southwest Bar or something like that.
Right next to that.
Throwing bar, right in
Yeah.
By that Collectivo on Water Street. Yeah, we saw him, and I think he was saying he's got a new idea that he was starting. We don't know.
Yeah, we've been sort of playing with this idea of creating a physical home for ourselves. Everything we've done with NEWaukee has been so intentionally temporal, right? Like we're going to come down for a couple hours, we're going to shine a light on it, and then hopefully our goal is like people swarm in, they love it, and then they support it after we leave, and we kind of like get out of the way. And we've been, we're in this beautiful office building, which is wonderful, but it has felt a little bit like disconnected from the community. Like we're up on the 5th floor. You'll notice like, you work down in this, nobody's in the hallway ever, right? Like it's just like, it's sort of like isolating in that way. And so
it really is.
What if we were to have our own building where our office would be, but then potentially other people could office with us and like maybe we would do events there. And so we've been working on that. It feels like forever. I know real estate deals take a lot longer than, our runway is so short, especially now, like where we're like, we can come up with an idea for a program on a Monday and on Wednesday, produce it. And so, this type of thing takes a long time, especially because we're not independently wealthy. And so we have to fundraise too. I think if we had a stack of cash, it probably would have gone a lot faster for us. But ideally, we would call it the Beacon. And it would be this center. Well, we've been calling it a center for belonging, right? So that people in the city could have a sense of, where they go to get connected with community resources.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, that it's a little bit on pause as we're trying to figure out like where we get financing, and our fundraising kind of like fell off with COVID as well. And so, but I still think there's a world in which that exists.
If you had an ideal place, what would it be?
I mean, we do have a building in mind, but I don't know that we'll get it now that, the seller wants to sell it. And it would be in Walker's Point.
A whole building?
A whole building that would be ours. And there would be really like 3 components to it. So there would be office space that would be shared. So lots of different small businesses could be there. There would be what we call like a retail incubator for people who sell like tangible wares as well as like food service people to sort of rotate in and out.
Very
and
cool.
Then like an event space where we could host things, but then potentially any of those other partners, whether they're the office users or the retail users, could also like host pop-up things to kind of keep the building. Really, it would be always alive, more like a community center and less like a traditional office.
That'd be cool. And that would be like exactly what NEWaukee is about.
An
office.
Exactly. It would be like our mission made manifest, you know what I mean? In a physical space. And I think we would still, I'm pretty sure we would still do events like out in the community, but we could like have a home and an anchor for that.
It's almost like another part of your brand too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're missing that part of your brand is that home spot, that home space. And everybody needs to know, NEWaukee works there, lives out of there, does their events out of there. So that would be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I feel like, I keep waiting for... maybe this is a silly way to do business, but I really do think you were meant to find that guy on the jet ski. You know what I mean? Like certain things are meant to be. And so I keep sort of like looking and feeling for like, okay, where's the energy going with this? And how do we go with the path of least resistance? Because it's a huge endeavor. And if it's meant to be on pause because of COVID, I'm fine with that. But I have a hard time believing that like it's gone. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that like this is the end.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I mean, as things sort of like open back up and where we end up with it.
Yeah. So as far as, path of least resistance, what about when you've reached resistance as you've built these, and when you have, quote unquote haters or just doubts when you're starting a business? How do you deal with that, or how did you as a company manage that stress or that risk and keep pushing through to where you are today?
Totally. I tend to really try to focus on listening to my gut. You know what I mean? It can be really noisy, like with clients coming at us and my own team coming with a million questions. And then, we've had things that like, because we do stuff in the public, sometimes the public doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Like we haven't had home runs 365. So I tend to really, any public criticism, I tend to take really seriously. And we don't always make adjustments, but we do really spend time evaluating what's being said about us. And then deciding either that we're like fortified in the way that we're moving forward, right? And that justified, like, this is why we're doing it, or to quickly shift. I mean, to just say like, okay, well, that needs to be done. And this is why. And, for me as a, like, as it relates to like, if we're making some new big, bold move, I just feel like I need to get really quiet. Like, how can I get as quiet as I can to listen to my gut? And it's never wrong, right? It just never is. And, finding ways to build that space into my week is really important, because it's easy to get stacked with 1,000 meetings. And then I just know myself, like I'm so depleted. My energy's so depleted. I can't think strategically. I tend to think more myopically and to get, stuck and snagged on stuff. And when I start to feel that, like as an irritation building, I know like, okay, that means I got to take some time off. I got to make sure that I have some space to like, sometimes it's literally like to just go take a walk so that I can like not even necessarily think about it, but just have some clear like peace of mind. And I know when you're starting a business, it can feel like I have to be hustling all the time, 100%, 24/7. Like if I stop being vigilant, but I've found over time that like creating space for reflection and even creating space for how you kind of like fill your own cup, both physically and emotionally, means that you're stronger and you can adapt faster if you feel whole. You know what I mean? If you're constantly operating with like, 50%, your creative output is only ever going to be 50%, if not less than that. And so how am I constantly filling up so that I feel like I'm at 100%? And monitoring that. That's been really hard, especially with like all of the civil unrest that's been happening. I've just been so emotionally affected, and I'll admit I've spent way too much time on Twitter, you know what I mean? Like in a rabbit hole and just getting like so upset about what's happening, you know what I mean? And like
every day is something new,
you know what I mean? And then having to say to myself, like, now I'm so emotionally wrecked. I can't even focus to send an email. Like, so what am I doing to myself? How am I going to like safeguard against giving myself the space? And then figuring out like, what am I going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, what if any, what can NEWaukie's role in any of this be, so that it feels like there's some like forward momentum. Otherwise, it's too heavy. You know what I mean? To like move forward.
Yeah. Have you been doing anything in the political scene with regards to this?
Yeah. So we completely pivoted all of our programming the last couple of weeks to directly address this. That what you've seen come out of us in the last 3 weeks was not what we had scheduled. So all of that got wiped away. And then, we've been really trying to just use our platform to share resources. So to be the one that's saying like, here's how you can support minority-owned businesses. Here's where you can go to register. Here's where you can go to like text, you know what I mean? Whether you're like signing petitions, or where you can go if you want to get out and protest. Like that, I feel like so far has been our like biggest gift to just say to our audience, which is, predominantly white. here's how you be a good ally. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens next. I think we're open to whatever comes to pass. Jeremy and I are both on the Millennial Task Force for the city of Milwaukee, which has been created by the Common Council to really figure out what we're going to do to attract and retain talent. And the conversation before this was really around how do we be as inclusive as we possibly can be in that effort. And I think now more than ever, we're really looking for serious recommendations we can make to have, the protests and everything be about police reform, but to have them be something bigger too, right? Like how do we attack some of these other systems that were broken for a long time? That now I think, that is the good part about COVID happening before this. I think there's not going back to the old normal, right? Like we're building a new earth from the ground up. I don't think there's any way to unsee what we've all seen. And I hope that we're a part of that. I mean, in a lot of ways, I hope we can continue to participate and be a way that people can get involved civically for the first time, but then also like be like a receptacle for ideas, for voices that don't normally get heard.
Are you afraid of losing followers due to political events or?
It's interesting. I should actually look and see the last couple of weeks if we've had unsubscribership at a different clip.
Yeah. I would just be curious, I guess, if anybody's
it wasn't even a thought until you just said it. Like it did not even occur to me. I think
it's important to stand for what you stand for, though.
Stand for what you stand for, and to be really as vocal as we possibly can be, and to know that like it's a privilege that we have amassed the subscribership we have, and that we have to take that responsibility seriously. You know what I mean? To like sit back and to wait for it to blow over and think like, well, we'll throw fun parties when this is all done is not an option for us.
No. Because we want to be a part of the change.
Exactly.
And anybody that isn't a part of the change.
And it's inherent in our name, right? Like it's about a new Milwaukee.
Exactly.
So how can we be a part of creating that?
Yeah. So what's your definition of success? Personally?
I don't know, man. I feel like I think for me, it's about resting in that gut feeling where it feels like we have a fully integrated life. What's been incredible about this journey with NEWaukee is there's been very little separation between my personal life and my work life.
That's good.
Which I think for a lot of people having to work from home for the first time have had to confront how different their like roles are, right? Like there's like my home life and my work life, and I can compartmentalize those. And now that everyone's had to like smash them together, they've had to maybe make adjustments on both ends.
Yeah, well, it's not too much different for us. And I'm sure you and Jamie too. Like you said, it's the home and the work life is somewhat the same for the past 10 years.
I finished a book that said if you're supposed to, a way you can do it is to make spaces within your home where you do something within each space of your home so that your mind, like you shouldn't be doing the same things you do in bed that you do somewhere else, so that your mind can be like, oh, I'm supposed to sleep now, because otherwise you get like to be awake and watching TV.
But I don't know how many times I've been up in bed texting Jeremy.
Like
I just feel it doesn't feel that different. And so how can I create more, I guess, like holism? Like that's for me, like how to have more integration and to feel like I'm operating with integrity every single day. And for me, the things that keep me awake at night now are really about taking care of the teams we've built. You know what I mean? Like it's not Jeremy and I anymore alone, right? Like we have these people whose livelihoods and families depend on us finding a path forward. And so I think about them constantly. Like how do we make sure that all of this works out so that they're not left high and dry. You know what I mean?
Do you think that you're successful?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think in all sort of senses, like, right, we've been able to do this for as long as we have. I mean, I like I said, I wish we had a pile of cash to buy a building on a whim, but I don't think that makes us unsuccessful. It just means that up to this point we haven't been focused on I guess saving money, but that doesn't mean we can't, choose to do that at some point.
Was there a point in your career from college to now that you knew that you made it or that you had the thing or a specific event that was like, okay, I'm now successful. Okay, this is the transition between I was, a college student, I was making nothing, and now I have meaning, I have purpose?
I think so much what we've done with NEWaukee has been so entrenched in our like own personal missions that I always felt really like secure in that. But I do think there was something that happened maybe 6 years in where I no longer felt like I was, where I felt really confident in what my expertise was, right? Like I understand experience design. I understand what makes people move. I understand the underpinnings that are needed, the social architecture that's needed for certain events to take place. It took about 6 years. Maybe that's, what is that, like the 10,000 hours?
10,000 hours, yeah.
Right.
Maybe you hit that.
For me to feel like, I'm talking to a client and they're suggesting something and instantly I know it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Let me explain. You know what I mean? It probably took another year or two for me to feel confident enough to speak up. Like there were definitely times where I felt like, all right, I'm going to say yes because I want the sale. I want them to feel good about coming up with an idea, even though I know in my gut it's not going to go off. Yeah. And it took another, year or two after sensing that and then being confident enough to speak up and to say like, let me tell you why I think that's not going to work and what I think we could do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
To get to your goal. Like you're saying this is your goal. And so, and it feels weird to push back on someone you're like, you're that client relationship. You're always trying to like make sure that they feel good.
Sure.
But the point is they're going to feel bad for a short time in the immediate when you tell them their idea is bad, or they're going to feel really bad in the long term when they don't renew with you because what you promised them didn't transpire because you went with, I didn't lead with the expertise I know that I have about how to get to that goal. Yeah. And so that took a really long time. And I think it's also because I started when I was 23. You know what I mean? Like so many of, still even though I feel like I've been doing this for 1,000 years, like I'm still one of the youngest people in the room. I'm still one of the only women in the room. Like, that is intimidating, and so it took me a long time to really stand in my own skin and to know what I know and then to use my voice, when I needed to. And I don't think there's any way really around that except to just keep doing it. It's like a muscle. You just keep training it and training it and training it.
Yeah. With clients, that's what we know that's their expertise. And that's what we're trying to do too, is like, we know that's your expertise, but this is ours. And in the long run, we're trying to save you time. What was the blessing thing too? Yeah, somebody was like, ask for my blessing because this is my business. Yeah. So that's what we've been learning is like, we want your blessing. We know that you've been building this for 10 years. However, in our digital space, this is what we think. And that's where we're fighting right now.
Yeah, I think and I resonated with the balance. It's like a balance of confidence and respect in the way of when you can kind of interject in your profession. So it's something that we're definitely learning right now.
Oh, and it's just a way of managing expectations, right? Like, even if you have a very articulated contract, I always find having a more formalized onboarding meeting after the negotiation is done, rather than just jumping into the work, is really necessary. And to hear, again, what is it that you expect? And even to ask questions like, what's your preferred mode of communication? Because I like to email, right? Like that's how I prefer to communicate, but maybe you don't. Maybe you don't get to your inbox. And then I feel like, well, I've reached out, I've followed up, and they never heard from you. And they're expecting to be reached out on their preferred modality of communication. And to write that down, to get that stated at the beginning really helps to clear up any of the like miscommunication that could happen in the future. And I don't know how many mistakes I had to make before I realized that. Like 1,000? Like 1,000 mistakes, you know what I mean? Where it was literally just about, they prefer text and I prefer email. And so if they text me and I don't get back, you know what I mean? It looks like I'm not following up. So that is, a simple little like business hack that I think is really, really important.
How do you come back from your mistakes?
I think, it's okay. You're not going to work with every single person for the rest of your life. It's okay to let some things go. And you'll find over time that like, at the beginning, you're like, we can do it all. We can do every type of, digital marketing that exists. And then you guys will find like there are some things you really like. There are some types of clients you really like. You know what I mean? You'll get clearer on who your target clientele is. And then it'll be easy to let some things go. And so I think if you act with integrity and you take responsibility where the responsibility is supposed to be taken, you can part, meaningfully with someone, and it's not about burning a bridge. And you never know. I mean, you never know. I think about, we're really, really close on a new client signing, someone we've never worked with, but our client contact there is someone we worked with a long time ago for a different project when she worked for a different company. And so, and I don't really remember even working with her. It was long ago, but she had a very positive experience with that. And so she's the one advocating on our behalf now inside this new company to, to secure this deal. And so I feel like really grateful that we operated with integrity throughout that exchange. Because now it means that we have someone, we have a brand ambassador within this new company we've never worked with before. And so that, I think if you can just be consistent with that, that can make all the world of a difference as well.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I know Brandon and I respect you and your values and NEWaukee and what you've built. And you're a model for everybody.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah. And you know what? You're going to be great. Whatever you do, just decide it, and then you'll find a way forward. You're the only one that's going to stop you from achieving your own success.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Angela Damiani, everybody. What's up, guys? It's Dan. Hope you liked that podcast. If you did, hit the like button. If you want to support us, hit subscribe. We want to hear from you. What industry are you looking to learn more about? We come out with a podcast every Thursday. See you next week.